Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 17th Ellis County Commission meeting. All those capable, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me do the roll call.
Commissioner Neil Younger,
Present.
Chair Michael Burgess,
Here.
Commissioner Nathan Liker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. I know one change to the order of business will be adding after the road right-of-way discussion and before the county commission budget, the discussion on Victoria improvement again. So that'll go in that section. And we do have 3 executive sessions at the end of the meeting. Are there any other changes to the order of business?
Asked to add an agenda item for the City of Hayes request for assistance of paving.
Okay. Where do we want that? After the Victoria, just put it there too, or?
Yeah.
It's all Brendan, right?
Yep.
Correct. City of Hayes staff is here if you want to do it earlier in the agenda, so they don't have to stick
Okay.
around if you like.
We could put that up through the Munger Road improvement.
Yeah, okay, we'll stick it in there. So we'll have City of Hayes request between Munger and the road right-of-way, and then after the road right-of-way, we'll have Victoria request in there.
Okay.
And we do have things to display, right,
Yes.
on those 2 items. I know they're not in the agenda. If anybody's pulling up the agenda, that they're not in there, but we will be able to display them, and Bobby will certainly take minutes on those 2 items. And again, 3 executive sessions at the end. Any questions or comments or changes to the prior minutes?
No.
No, prior minutes
There?
are good.
Okay. Consent agenda?
I'll move to approve consent agenda items A through G.
I'll second that.
Okay. We got a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any comments or changes or questions on there? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. Issues from persons not on the order of business. Okay. Is this on Munger, though?
Yes.
Okay, we have a topic on that, so if you want to speak during that, we can let you, if you'd prefer there. Anybody else in the public that'd like to speak to the commission? Okay. Monthly department reports and comments.
No comment from me. Look good.
It was busy. Quick comment, the sheriff's department, for whatever reason, they're low on their jail population, so I don't look for it to stay, but it's very low in comparison to when we took seat a couple of years ago.
Very good.
That and just to comment on the time frame that we get to them places when there is a fire or something is unreal. And it's almost less than 10 minutes, so kudos to them.
First item, local emergency operations plan adoption, Mr. Lyle Pantel, emergency manager.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lyle
Morning.
Pantel, Assistant Director of Fire and Emergency Manager. Over the past week, I've let you all have an opportunity to review this large Bible, we'll call it, of information, and now it's time to test your knowledge, so I'm going to turn to this. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. I've made minor changes to it and added, the biggest thing we added to was the EOP mapper function, which is all electronically stored database that the state and other assisting agencies, should we have a large-scale incident, can use to assist us. Mainly locations of all critical infrastructure or map overlays of certain items, emergency snow routes, clearance, all kinds of things in there. So the next step in the process is for the commission to officially adopt this through promulgation, and then it goes back to the state, and we're already in their good graces because they've approved the plan as is, but we have to adopt it locally for them to really be happy with us. The actual EOP itself, I can't share with the general public. It is for official use only. And again, the document doesn't outline any specific operations that we do. It's more of a, we'll say, a checklist and a playbook for someone to follow should we need to. Sorry about that. Were there any additional questions that you had in regards to the EOP?
I had just visited with Darren earlier. I wanted to know how many year in the process is that for 5-year, 6-year, 4-year upgrade?
So this one will be good until December 31st, 2031. But the actual update process, it's recommended that you update it periodically just to make sure that the information you have within there is accurate, and so that when it comes time to actually do the official update, you have less work on your plate, so you don't spend a year and a half every day trying to comb through this to update it as needed, especially if your county undergoes a lot of changes in that time period.
Okay, that way the people that are watching or the ones that are in the audience kind of know what it is too, so.
Yeah, and I did put a considerable amount of time trying to update this. It was back and forth emails with the plans people at the Kansas Department of Emergency Management. You know, I don't see this in here. If you have it, where's it at? I'm gonna respond, okay, I don't see it either. We need to have this added, or I found it in this section. Here's where it's at. Okay, that looks good. You know, and this is all based off of the Kansas planning standards. And I was able to get ours approved under the 2020 Kansas planning standards. And those are updated every 3 years.
Okay. That, there's a lot of inventory that is taken into account in that. Will that be, does that get periodically updated, or is that just going to stand until the end?
No, it periodically updated. I will reach out to departments that have information in there regarding equipment and probably do it on an annual basis.
Okay.
That way it's at least an annual thing rather than, you know, every few years or once an update cycle.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I move to adopt the March 2025 update of the Ellis County Emergency Operations Plan, and for the commission chair, sign the attached proclamation letter.
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion, and a second on the table. Any other questions for Lyle or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed, passes 3-0. Thank you, Lyle.
I
Thanks,
appreciate it,
Lyle.
Commissioners. Thank you.
Munger Road Improvement Request, we got Brendan McKay, but I'll let, is it David and Stephanie? I'll let you speak first.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name's David Valising. I'm a resident of Hayes here in Ellis County. This is Stephanie Leithhead. She's a resident of Munger here in Ellis County. Together, we operate an Airbnb in Munger, Kansas. That Airbnb brings in revenue, not just to Munger or through the Airbnb, but our guests will often go to the well there in Munger, and they come into Hayes. They shop and go to local diners in Hayes. On the agenda today, you'll see that there's a request of action for alley and an unpaved portion of Dawn Street in Munger to be improved or possibly blocked off. This alley is used by us and is not currently used by our guests of the Airbnb. The reason that we use the alley is so that we can access the portion of the home which is not used by our guests and allow them to have the peace and quiet and the tranquility that they enjoy so much of that quaint little Airbnb in Munger. We sent the letter asking for some minor improvements to the alleyway because as it stands, it is just bare grass. It could be something as simple as gravel, some crushed concrete, whatever the cheapest possible improvement is so that there's not mud and potholes forming in the alley. The reason we did this at this stage is because the tenant at 877 Moscow feels he owns the alleyway and the unpaved portion of Dawn Street, which is clearly not the case, as shown by county records, which I have here and I pulled up earlier on on the maps, showing that they are right-of-ways. Twice, we've had people come on to the Airbnb property and be very rude towards us because we use the alley and Don Street as it is legally designed and authorized to be used. Over the last several months, I have noted at least 10 other people of Ellis County use that alleyway. Not just us, but the folks at 877 have used it to park their personal vehicles and trailers on. A neighbor on Main Street has used it to park a camper on. The neighbors to the next of us use it to bring trailers in and out as well. Not to mention Vive, Nextech, and Midwest Energy have all driven through that alleyway. We are currently working on several projects that would expand our Airbnb, and as part of that, we would like to eventually allow our guests to park on the backside of the residence, which would require the use of that alley. And that's why we'd ultimately like to see some improvements there. I especially ask that we ask that you support all taxpayers equally in this endeavor and support your local small businesses that bring in that extra revenue to the community. If you choose not to, then the financially responsible thing, not to mention the morally and ethically appropriate response, should be to do nothing and leave things the way they are. I especially ask that you do not waste any taxpayers' money for one person who wishes to simply exert control over his neighbors for personal gain so he can park his personal cars and trailers blocking the entire road, affecting quality of life for everybody in the city. If you'd like, I have these images printed off here. I was short on time, so I only have one set. I could pass these around for you guys to look at. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
So the area you're referring to is on the first picture on the slide here, and I believe the picture that you have there is kind of below, right in there is the area you're referring to.
That is the unpaved portion of Don Street, yes. And that connects to the alley. If it wasn't for that opening there, the alley would be a one-way entrance only, so you'd have to go into the alley and then either back the entire way of the alley or somehow figure out a way to make a three-point turnaround to get back out of the alley.
Okay. Well, and then, I mean, Munger as a town, I know over the years has had flooding issues and this stuff. I mean, I think that's partially, I don't know the full reason why it hasn't been developed, but I believe it's more or less for drainage at this point.
And if it is just for drainage and it would cause issues and are extreme financial hardship for the county, then I'd say just leave things the way they are, but traffic should still be able to go through there just like they go through the unpaved alleyway.
Okay. Brendan, you mind answering a few questions on the drainage? I mean, you would have a better idea of what's affected.
Yes, sir. Brendan McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director. So right now, this portion of Don Street, just like the adjoining portion to the west, is really just a water storage area and holding area or waterway for the drainage. That's why that road had never been built. And there's utilities scattered throughout it. There's a manhole cover that if we were to build a roadway there, we'd have to relocate a number of utilities as well as come up with a solution for the stormwater that we would be pushing off on the neighboring properties.
Okay.
I guess I've lived there all my life, which were little walkway bridges. That's kind of
On the west end.
on the west side, on Main Street. That is a natural drainage when it does rain hard, just like beside my house. I took it upon myself because every time it would rain, it would wash everything away. And I had done it, I don't know how many times until I finally got smart enough to concrete it. And my neighbor and myself signed a letter that portion where I live is closed due to people driving through, rutting it up. That portion of Don Street I watched when I was a small kid. The county put rock in. We'd get a rain. It was clear down a block and a half away. All the material was there. So without concreting that, that's what'll happen with that. And if it is allowed for people to drive through there, they will rut it, they will loosen the soil. When it does rain, we're gonna have the same thing, only we're gonna have probably 2 or 4 sets of tracks that will erode. And
The parish council also reached out to this county. They were the first ones to reach out about vacating or closing Don Street to through traffic or to vehicle traffic, leave it open for utilities. Is the individuals have been driving through the church's property to get out when there's been water sitting in that low area. So they reached out first. They did not sign the letter. The council didn't want to feel comfortable signing it, but they did want to support it. They called again to reach out to us to acknowledge their support of the closing the portion of Don Street to vehicle traffic. So 2 of the 3 adjoining landowners have signed a letter requesting, just like Don Street to the west, close it to through traffic or vehicle traffic.
And as you guys see on where my property is on 891 Main, if you look there, the county has barricades on both sides because we had that same thing. It just kept washing out and washing out when it rains. Just like this morning, 80 and that thing had water in it. So it is definitely and it does come from the street also, but a lot of it comes right beside my house. And it was a problem. So that's what happened at that point.
Explain the difference between closure and vacating.
Closure is just closing it to vehicle traffic. The right-of-way would still exist there, but it would not be for vehicle traffic. But utilities in there would still be able to be accessed. So the recommendation would be to close the roadway but not vacate the right-of-way. If we vacate the right-of-way, we would need to acquire private easements for all those companies that are within there and relocate all those utilities to that new easement.
So
that's
through
the-
closure, we'd be blocking it off with something though,
To
right?
vehicle traffic,
Right.
but it would still be ways through for those utility companies to access.
Right.
Whether we have breakdown posts or,
Is there anything,
But then you legally couldn't park there still. I mean, you can't legally park there now. It's an actual road, but if it's closed off, then again, legally, it's still the county's property and
correct.
you're not gonna, I mean, because I can see that happening. You barricade it, fine, nobody can drive down, now I'm gonna park my car in there.
With that being said, I tried that years ago. I parked my trailer in the alley. I don't think I even hit the house, and my phone was ringing that I had from the sheriff that I had to move my trailer out of the alley. I moved it there because you guys were getting ready to chip seal. This has been years ago. So I explained it to the sheriff, so he made me move it, and I ended up taking it down by my parents. But, yeah, so you're correct on that. That is.
And then in speaking to the alley maintenance, the county has not, at this point, maintained alleys in platted areas because the right-of-way is not big enough for a legal public roadway. A lot of times those were just intended to be utility easements, just may have been called an alley.
Is there anything said, because there's portions in Munger that people took it upon themselves to put crushed concrete, whatever. Is there anything that we need to do that they cannot do that?
That's a tough question to answer. I'd have to
Okay.
refer to Jeter. It is county, there is public right-of-way there,
Mm-hmm.
but it is not publicly maintained at right-of-way.
Okay.
Could they go through the same process as we're talking like with Hilltop and stuff and essentially do a petition and where the county, property owners say, yeah, we'll do the improvement, we'll create our own district
I don't see
to
why
do
they
that?
couldn't. That'd be a Bill Jeter question as well for the county counselor. I don't want to misspeak.
You want to say that again?
Well, like this is a, regarding the alleyways, because it is county property, they really can't improvement on their, property owners really shouldn't be improving it on their own, but could they create their own, kind of like we're talking with Hilltop and those, where the property owners say, we're gonna improve our road, we'll create this petition to, pay the taxes ourselves for the improvement.
Yeah, they could form, County Councilor Bill Jeter, they could form their own little special district to make improvements to that alley. Same way as as you meant, Little Creek Estates and
Yeah.
others. Yeah, so it'd be paid out on real estate taxes going forward. And that'd be, of course, subject to the commission approving the improvement with the understanding that the county would then be obligated to maintain it to some degree.
To some degree, right. Okay.
So right now, we do not maintain behind 882 Moscow where they put the whole alley of millings. They took it upon theirself and
That's
it
my
was done.
understanding.
Yep.
Brendan, what do we do for, like, Dawn Street here, that is in our right-of-way, it's listed as right-of-way, but we more or less don't maintain it and defer it to the property owners to, as you can see, mow it and maintain it?
Like you said, we don't do anything with it. That you'll see in another later agenda item, we've got a portion of roadways where right-of-way was never built out, but the right-of-way was from the plat or from statute. Effectively, if it was not built in a period of 7 years for a statute roadway, that road is effectively vacated. This being a platted development, it does not follow that same thing. So the right-of-way still exists there, and if you close it, you can always go back and improve that roadway and reopen it to public traffic. If you vacate it, it's more steps involved to reestablish something.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna pose a question to County Councilor. What type of liability do we have on platted roads that are under our right-of-way that we don't actually do anything on?
Well, we've always got exposure to liability as long as we own the right-of-way. The only way that we would get out from under that, well, two ways. We could vacate it, and then it's not our property anymore. Second way is declare it a minimum maintenance road, and maintenance roads are exempt from liability under the Kansas Tort Claims Act.
Okay.
And I think we have a few of those in
We
the
do have a few
county.
minimum maintenance roads in the county.
Yeah, otherwise, we own it, we've got some obligation there.
So,
Although it's discretionary with the commission how much maintenance to do on a road, if any, if we're made aware, for example, through Brendan, that we've got a situation development that could cause some liability issues and we neglect to do anything as a commission, then you got some exposure if something
Okay.
happens.
no, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm kind of leaning that, like on this, that right now we're open. I mean, it's not declared as a minimum maintenance or anything, so either if we want to leave it open or something, I think maybe we ought to look towards doing a declaration such as that to limit some of our liability on it. If that's the direction the other gentlemen choose to go.
The third option is close it to public traffic.
Yeah.
Leave it as the right-of-way there for utilities to stay within, but do not allow vehicular traffic across it.
Do we still have liability if it's closed to public traffic but not declared minimum maintenance?
Probably not. That may depend on what kind of signage we have and whether it's pretty clear to people that
Okay,
it's closed.
okay.
I mean, we can try to close it, and then we have knowledge that people are still using it anyway. Then we've accomplished nothing, which would probably still expose us to some liability. I think any liability on that road or that alleyway would be very minimal and speculative anyway.
When, with that, in 1974 and 75, when the Munger Sewer District was established, the white stone post that you see sitting there, the concrete one, that went all the way across there. And when they put the sewer in, they took them out and they did not put them back. You can go up to where the walk bridge is there. There's some there, and if you go west, there's 4 more there that that road was all, they were not put back in, and I don't know if it was maintenance or they just took them out and thought, no big deal. But yeah, if there would not have been operable sewer, that road would be closed because of the washing out from the rains. Yeah, it don't rain, but when it does, it comes down through there.
Commissioner Younger, with that knowledge, do we need to research, or maybe there's something that, I mean, we've come across resolutions and stuff in the past that have cropped up. Is there anything out there that we're
I've not found
overlooking?
any official closures of this roadway.
You have not found any
No,
official
sir.
close, have you found any documentation on any changes that we're overlooking?
Not to my knowledge, no. There was a portion of Munger that was vacated, but that was, the only portions that have been vacated so far are unbuilt portions on the south end of town, and then across 280th Avenue.
Okay.
There's a portion of right-of-way vacated over there, but no vacations on this other than the closure of the public traffic of Don Street. But this is not the only section of roadway that was not built according to the plat.
And you searched through like the Register of Deeds, did you search through other record, like commission records or anything like that?
Not through all of the commission records, but I looked through the Register of Deeds where it would be filed for the closures,
Okay,
where it should be filed at.
okay.
And back then, Bobby can probably remember this, when them were across there, that was all a playground. That was all our football field, baseball field. Them houses were not even in there, and maybe that's why they had put the posts in there so nobody would drive through. The west side, you weren't going to get through, but this east side off of Moscow, you might have been able to.
Okay. Well, I just didn't,
Yeah,
because we've
I
come
understand.
across other resolutions and such
Mhm.
that, you know, have cropped up that have been more or less forgotten about.
I guess I'm just leaning towards closure of that. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It accesses an alley, but it's already closed on one end, whether that's legal or not.
Yeah,
That
the walk
bridge
bridge and
is
that you
in the
can't get
way.
through.
It's already essentially blocked off.
There's a power pole in the bridge and that concrete
So,
post. So you can only come in from the east
Yeah.
side from Moscow Street. You can't
yeah, I
access
don't
this roadway from.
think
Main
there's
Street.
any reason to put any money into it to improve it. So it's always gonna be a grassy area as far as I'm concerned. So to me, it's not worth having any access to it to drive on, other than just to have utilities. So I can see that bollard there. We went and looked at it last week, and I could see where you just put 3 or 4 bollards across there and block it off. And if the property owner wants to park in there, then we get the sheriff involved and say it's still county property, you can't park in there, and move on from there. That's, I guess, my feelings on it.
I'll be honest, I don't think we should really do anything. I think we should just let it kinda as is, because if we wanna go block it and let that, the property owner can then go, well, we're not mowing it, we're not maintaining it, we're gonna let it, turn into an overgrown jungle and have other issues crop up with it. So at least at this point in time, they're keeping it clean, and that helps improve that whole area for cleanliness.
The adjoining property owners did say they would continue to mow it if it was closed,
Okay.
like they are doing now.
Although it is ours, I do help quite a bit on the church. And probably in the last maybe month, I have noticed that when I was mowing over there, I did see one out-of-state tag go west, and they cut across the church property. So whether it was coming from you guys or not, I don't know that, but I know there was one that I seen come across there.
And that was why the church reached out to us, because there'll be water sitting, just like in this picture there, you can see a little bit of water. To avoid the water and mud coming out on Don Street, they will drive through the church's property into their parking lots.
I mean, we can easily put up signs that say, please do not drive when wet. been this way since the seventies. So, according to Commissioner Younger, so I don't see a need to be. to do a
That
bunch
doesn't
of
bother me
changing.
either, just leave it alone and move on with other items. That doesn't bother me either. I don't.
Would you like the other petition to table this for till the July meeting, and the other petitioners can attend as well to explain their side for requesting closure?
I mean, I can understand why there's closure. I mean, if we want to, fine. Brendan, could you work us up something about what it would take to put up some signs of, please, of not driving when wet or something, or parking in there?
They wouldn't be,
Maybe minimal.
there'd be no authority to, with those signs. They're not regulatory signs. It would just be a sign that,
Oh, it'd be a recommended, I mean, at least stop some of the running, maybe.
it's kind of like the children at play signs. We don't advise putting those up because it's for roadway users. If anything, you would make it minimum maintenance, and we would have a resolution on that, but, stay off when wet or muddy, that's not in the MUTCD. Would not recommend we start putting up signs that don't follow those codes.
Okay.
I had tried that thing, and it wasn't even my property, it was the county's at the time, that people just kept coming driving right through by my house, because I had a nice driveway before I concreted it, and that didn't work. They started going through the whole thing, and then you end up with that, by that garage, since there's no gravel, and when it rains, you got 2 waterways going right through
That
there.
garage is actually the alley portion that's shown there with the water sitting on it.
Right,
Right.
but if you let them come through Dawn Street, that's what's gonna happen with no gravel is what I'm getting at, or
Correct.
concrete, or whatever. If I hadn't seen it, I would say, yeah, keep driving through, but I've seen it over the years.
No, for my 2 cents, my recommendation is we move on and not do anything. I would suggest that if you can keep the travel to a minimum, would be the route to go. And then I would also suggest that we make that a minimum maintenance road, or at least suggest that, so that takes liability off of us.
That works for me. I mean, we don't need to be involved, and if it's been that way forever and ever, then I'm good with it too, at this
Getting more
point.
use now, and
No,
Well-
it's kind of a change of use, but it could be permanent, it could be temporary. so.
Right, yeah.
I don't want to make major changes for something that, with a change of ownership could be a temporary thing,
Mhm.
so.
Okay, with that
Okay.
being said, the same street, Dawn Street, going west on Dawn, if I hadn't put asphalt chunks, millings in there, that road would be terrible, and you know that. You've seen that, and I'm sure you guys have too. There's a lot of people drive that in that back. So are we gonna do minimal maintenance on that?
well, the advice would
'Cause
be
you're
to
gonna
make it a
start-
minimum maintenance road. We would have to start maintaining it. There is no standard for how often minimum maintenance is, but it does not mean no maintenance.
You know-
Right now, there's no maintenance on this roadway, so there would be a change for,
Why would there be a change? We haven't done anything,
Yeah,
and
it's not
nobody's
built.
asking us to do anything other than to fully improve it or just
Yeah.
leave it alone. I don't know why we'd have to all of a sudden go into, well,
If
now
we-
we declared it minimum maintenance, we have to do maintenance. That doesn't,
that's how the standard for the statute reads. Minimum, declared.
what is it now, though? It's not even maintained
now it's-
above minimum maintenance.
right
Right
now
now,
it's
it's
not
above minimum
main-
maintenance, but we're not even maintaining that. So why, if we declared even less maintenance, do we have to go in and do maintenance?
It's my understanding that road has not been built, it's not traveled, so it is just open right away that is not accessed
Right,
to.
and so let's just leave it that way,
Okay,
So,
you know?
do we declare it minimum maintenance
I
then?
guess that's the question for Counselor, is that if it hasn't been built, and like Brendan's stating, is that, are we creating more problems if we do declare it? Or do we just kind of leave it and table it and walk off?
I don't think you're creating any liability, any additional liability one way or the other, really.
Okay.
I mean, it's still a public right of way, and whatever maintenance is done, whether it's minimum maintenance or none, I mean, that's discretionary with the commission.
Okay.
So if if there's some defective condition there that we know of and we don't fix it, then we got a liability issue potentially, regardless of what we call it.
So we can essentially do absolutely nothing and be in the same boat as if we do anything.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think there's any further reason to make this more complicated than necessary.
It's gonna get rutted up just like that one in the alley, because if you guys are having that much traffic through there, that's what's gonna happen. I'm just here to say that. Sure.
When the neighbors came and consulted us the first time, we told them that we would respect their wishes and not drive through there unless absolutely necessary, and we have done that. Any other traffic has been other residents of this county. I don't foresee any uptick in any additional traffic or anything going through there, and I'm gonna stick to that respectful neighborhood. You know, they want to watch out for the ruts. You guys are telling me there's gonna be extra ruts. We're gonna do our best to make sure we're not gonna rut up the alleyway, right? Obviously, on the other end, where we live, there's gonna be some ruts, because we need to get in and out of the alley on our side of the alley. And the neighbor at 877 should have no say on that portion of the alley. And we'll continue to work with our other neighbors peacefully, try to get some petitions, get them together. Maybe we can take care of it ourselves and leave the commission out of it altogether, and just make some minor improvements on that portion behind our own residences, okay? So we appreciate your consideration, but I am on board with Nathan and Michael's wishes to just leave things as they are. Things aren't gonna get worse. All this boils down to is one grumpy person pushed a little too hard, and we wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing, and so we brought it before you gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Just follow up, actions, no action taken, or start the process of declaring that minimum maintenance. Get the resolution and signs made up.
Just say
I'm
no,
gonna say
no
no
action
action
taken. At this point, just leave it as no action, and if there's something else we need to consider, we'll just bring it up as another topic in the county commission, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. I mean, if we're gonna leave it, then if it does become a problem, then we will be coming back to. And since I live there, I kind of keep a close eye on everything, so.
Appreciate it. Next item is the City of Hayes request, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, before the commission is a request to assist the city of Hayes with chip sealing this year. The request is for 66,050 yards, which is the parking lot area at the golf course. The city would supply the oil and aggregate. The county would supply the equipment and labor to apply the chip seal. This wasn't on the agenda originally, as we did not get it in time to make it this agenda. It's been added, thankfully, because the time to do these city projects, assist them with this work, falls in best with our schedule to do it during harvest, which is coming up potentially later this week and in the next 2 weeks. And would push this out to the July 1st meeting, we'd miss that window, we felt. So it'd be a day's worth of work, less than a day's worth of work to apply that much material. And the city will remove all the parking blocks prior to us doing the work to assist with that portion.
We also have Ellis.
Yep, the commission already previously approved the Ellis assistance.
To just our day, just our labor, our days' labor and our equipment, or?
Yes.
am
No financial portion from the county, just our equipment and labor, like we've done in the past for the cities within Ellis County to assist them.
Well, I'll move to approve Ellis County Public Works Department to assist the city of Hayes in completing their chip seal project utilizing county labor and equipment.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? It'll work within our schedule, though. We're
Correct.
providing labor, so we want to try to do it during labor, but if there's other things we're doing as a county,
Yes.
we prioritize that first and then get
Correct.
to this when we can. Okay.
just with harvest coming on, it's a good time to pull equipment off the major routes that are gonna be seeing heavy traffic.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. Road right-of-way discussion of road improvements. Brandon McKay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
So previously, the commission asked me to come up with locations where our roads are narrow, there might not be ditches, or just the road was not built to super highway standards. So on the attached maps, there are two. There is one that has the narrow right-of-ways where there is minimal or no ditch, whether that is only 40 feet of right-of-way or it is just a lesser road. And the other one is areas of significance where we have right-of-way that is unbuilt, or where there is maintenance, where there may not be right-of-way that we've been unable to find, or there is right-of-way and it is maintained, but it goes to a private residence. It acts more as a driveway. And that's not everything, that's a 10,000-foot overview. And I'm not saying that all of those roadways there that have right-of-way that's unbuilt, we should build. And also, I'm not saying that we should just vacate all of those. Each one needs to be considered individually, as well as all of the roadways that are narrow with no shoulders, no ditches or minimal ditches. It may not be in our best interest to make those 8-foot flat bottom ditches due to the amount of travel, the type of traffic, and the amount of usage. The last thing we want to do as a county is neglect our major routes to improve these lesser traveled roads that are seasonally used for harvest. We don't want to improve those at the expense of our major traveled routes, major thoroughfares through the county.
So the first map is, we're too narrow on the right-of-way, is it?
Too narrow, no ditches, or there are no ditches established. There may be additional right-of-way there, but the right-of-way's been farm shut.
Okay.
There's a lot of roads there.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of miles there.
Correct.
I would like to make a suggestion to my fellow commissioners that we break this up into maybe some sections or sectors like quadrants, and we start in one area and we kind of look through it. We had this suggestion from the appraiser, and he's not here this morning, but at our retreat to do kind of an inventory of county-owned properties. Some of this stuff that is on the books but unutilized, not on tax rolls, so on and so forth. I would make a suggestion that we split up some of the roads and some of this property inspection and just start methodically going through a process of, okay, we're gonna go in this quadrant and we're gonna look through it, and we establish a group of people that meets, to kind of discuss it and then bring it forth to us. Because swallowing and chewing through a map like this is a daunting task.
So you're saying cut it up in possibly like 4s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and start on one and
Just start on
see
one
what.
section and then we'll try and complete one section
Mhm.
and then move to the next.
4 may still be too big.
Yeah.
And it might be,
Yeah.
maybe we need to do 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something like that. Along that thought, we're looking at Public Works and adding changing some of the structure of that and potentially putting in a project, I don't know what we're calling project managers, but I think we're kind of, right now is what we're calling it. To me, that'd be something that a project manager can help kind of, I think, navigate day to day. Here's where we're gonna start looking and gathering the information about some of these roads and right-of-ways and no right-of-ways and no easements or whatever we call everything. So I think that would be one of the things that I think a project manager would certainly be able to hopefully manage with some of our GIS technology and access. Because yes, trying to do this all
Trying to
at
do it all
once
from
or-
here on the bench is gonna be very difficult.
Yeah.
I think we need to establish like the project manager and maybe a group, kind of more or less 3 or 4 people that can go through it. Maybe somebody out of the appraiser's office, and I don't mean to take away from some of their time, but
Yeah.
we needed kind of a team of people to kind of look through
Yeah.
a list and go, okay, yeah, this is what we see, and these are suggestions to come back to us.
I think kind of one of the questions I have for Brendan or maybe other commissioners on this, I guess a little bit of what are we trying to accomplish? From my standpoint, I think what we're trying to accomplish is just getting back to what a county is responsible for doing, maintaining our infrastructure as fully as possible. And some of these, I'll just call them handshake deals in the past of why we've started to maintain little bits here and there. I think we're trying to, save the budget, save county taxpayer dollars and our public works time and effort into doing what is responsible for the county. Am I hitting what you're?
No,
kind of
that would,
doing?
I mean, my recommendation would be for this narrow right-of-way map, would be to first look at where we have this area of minimal ditches along our FAS routes. Because those are the critical roads to get people to and from places within our community that are regularly accessed, not just seasonally accessed during harvest or ag season. That would be my first recommendation to look at, is which ones of these fall along our FAS routes, because they should have been increased in right-of-way at the time, but sometimes 60 feet of right-of-way is not enough. 210th is not an FAS route. That has 60 feet of right-of-way in there, but that is one we're looking at increasing because of the surrounding hillsides. So you have to look at the adjoining topography to see if additional temporary easement or permanent easement is. That would be my recommendation to the commission, is to use this map to first look at our major routes, to make those roads the best we can with our financial constraints, and then start looking at the lesser traveled roadways.
Well, and I guess from my standpoint, and I agree with Brendan on that, but I think also kind of clarifying what where we're at, so Brendan isn't faced with, well, we've been doing this for years, but now we found out we're not responsible for it, and just kind of drop, stopping services or changing services, I think, so we can further support our public works department. So we're clear as a bench to know what we can and can't support. And then that way our operators know where they should and shouldn't be. But sending a clear signal about what our intent is to make the roads that we're responsible for the best we got.
And as our chair said, the handshake deal from years ago, I guess the only thing is, we may want to use caution when we do these, that we still give our whole community access for fire, emergency services that we, provide, that we don't get one that and that'll be the project manager's, possibly, his responsibility to do that.
And I think that's a little bit why Nathan kind of has brought this up a little bit more over the times, because we keep running into individuals saying all of a sudden you've stopped doing something, and then we have to kind of weigh that individually and be like, well, here's why we're stopping, or here's why maybe we'll continue. But now if we take this as a thing, we can start addressing those individuals a little bit more proactively instead of waiting for them to be mad that we're doing or not doing something. And so if we're a little bit more proactive with some of these areas that we're maintaining, and we say, hey,
In these roadways there
We're
that's
not.
narrow, it's not something that's happened in the last 5 or 10
Yeah,
years. They've
no.
been like that since the roads were originally created.
it also
So if
gets
there's-
into our reliability questions of, we're maintaining roads that aren't actually ours, or
Correct.
or maybe we don't have enough
Right away.
and we don't realize it, and then, so to me, that
When they
there's
were
some,
established, it was for horse and buggy, so 40 feet was adequate, and that's why the statute has changed now. Any new open public roadway has a minimum of 60 feet of right-of-way to be able to build a 20 to 24-foot road top driving surface. So that's still not enough in all cases because of surrounding topography, to be able to establish gentle slopes, you don't have steep drop-offs.
Well, there's plenty of areas that, that we're gonna look at that have changed. We've changed the usage, the traffic going to and
Yeah.
from. A prime example is going up to the Hilltop Edition up there. That's a great example. It's got a narrower right of way. The usage has changed. And so taking into account some of those changes that haven't been looked at in years, I think it'd just be a worthwhile task.
I think some
To
of
at
the
least get
history
something
along
started.
with horse and buggy and stuff, I mean, we used to be township, kind of, and that's, as we get to looking at kind of dividing this up, we'll probably divide it up into basically what used to be townships that maintain their own little areas. We don't have that structure anymore in Ellis County. The county's responsible for the whole thing, but I think that's kind of ultimately how we're gonna have to chunk this out, is kind of 9 quadrants or more, and
Yeah.
get back into that. And then some of these roads were probably maintained originally by those townships, because it's a little easier to maintain your neighbor's driveway when you're the neighbor.
Yeah.
So,
We are a county unit system, so we maintain everything outside of incorporated city limits. That's why there are some of these roadways that are narrower, smaller, lesser traffic. Those would have been under township maintenance in the past. That's why they may not have been improved or expanded. But we also really need to consider the amount that the staff out there can do. And we really do not want to lose major roadways to improve a 2-mile section that is accessed only seasonally.
Well, and that's where if we go through and establish, okay, this is a narrower, smaller road, we can at least identify it and notify the landowners, the adjacent landowners, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, kind of provide some public knowledge about what's happening, where it's happening, why it's
Well,
happening.
expectations will always continue to rise no matter what we do.
I understand that, but
And-
we've got to be able to explain,
Yeah.
you know, so.
okay. My other question on the other map, it says error on map, what is?
That was a map that I had that had something marked on there that was nothing, that we do not maintain it, that there's no right of way. That is why I have it listed as errors.
Okay. What are,
There's only
what are we
3
using for maps now? And I think we have hopefully better access coming or something?
That would be my
GIS?
intent. So I am using an old form of AutoCAD to update maps for these drawings. And Adobe, I don't have access to the county's GIS system to make the maps like the GIS division does for the commissioners. So this is something that we're doing with our own resources we have there. We're able to get a old AutoCAD license to reinstall on the new computer. It's an obsolete version, but it still works. It's not meant for mapping, but you can use it for mapping. So the changes I make in AutoCAD on our maps do not correspond with any changes that GIS makes. So this was an old AutoCAD drawing of a map before the county moved to GIS, so that's what I'm building off of. But it doesn't correlate back to our GIS system.
Okay.
We're not integrated with that point.
At this point. Okay.
I'm kind of confused here. We pay for a partnership with the city of Hayes for our appraiser to have a very good high-tech system. Why doesn't anything correlate over or spill over to Public Works?
It's probably a question Mike Liker needs to help address. Probably has to do with licenses, training, accessibility, control.
Okay, good. Sorry to drag you up here, Mike.
That's all right. Mike Liker, Ellis County IT Director. So what we're talking about is just a matter of licensing, really. I mean, there has to be some coordination between the GIS department and the other departments that would utilize it. But if we would get Esri licensing because the GIS department uses primarily Esri products, and the appraiser's office uses AutoCAD for some of the building some of the base plats, the parcel data, and it would just be a matter of purchasing additional licensing so that other departments can use that licensing and then sharing that data. But we have to maintain some semblance of control or standards so that, you know, if another department wants to go in and make a change, it has to be in coordination with the GIS department so that we're not fighting each other. You know, somebody in GIS might make a change and then somebody in another department might change that back or whatever. So it's just a matter of coordination and licensing, really. Doesn't really correlate to our partnership with the city, although there are some adjoining properties that are, you know, butting up to the city property. But that's something that we can work out between Ellis County IT and our other departments that want to utilize it. And then, of course, the other thing is, you know, does that department have the skill set to operate the Esri software? And that's something I'd have to ask. I don't know. So it's just mostly a matter of licensing and coordination between the departments. So,
Okay.
in the past, there have been requests from other departments to the Ellis County IT department, GIS division, to make changes like this as projects. And we're okay still doing that if that's the way we want to go. But it's just something we need to work out between departments. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mike, is that the licensing, that's every year or 5-year?
It's a subscription.
Okay.
Yeah, and each additional workstation that you want to put on requires an additional subscription, a license that is renewed annually. And we recently upgraded to an enterprise version of that licensing, so the pricing tiers and everything has changed. But yeah, each additional seat, if you will, or computer is a license.
Could
So-
you, I mean, we're early enough in our budget process. Could you get us that number before we finalize things?
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
handy to have.
Yeah, I just need to talk with whatever departments want to, I mean, it sounds like maybe it's just Public Works, but visit with them to find out, you know, how many seats they want and, you know, we'll go from there. Yeah, I can
Okay.
get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Is Esri the same as this ArcGIS? I got it pulled up here that I go, or is
No,
that
they're
something else?
they're two different companies. Well, I'm sorry, you said ArcGIS?
Yeah.
Yes,
The
they
one
are
that's
the
on
same
our
thing.
site that I got it pulled up, I can drill right down on properties and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was
So
thinking
that's-
AutoCAD.
okay.
But yes, Esri owns,
That's-
they're the parent company that has GIS, ArcGIS and ArcMap and ArcView and all
Okay.
those types of things. And then AutoCAD is a different software altogether. It's more of an engineering
Yeah.
type of software, so.
Okay. So I have a question, but I don't know how to ask it. If I'm as public, and I wanted to look, so where is it declared that this is an official public road? Is it through the appraiser's office, through Esri, through
The
the
first.
clerk?
The
or-
first place you look at would be at the clerk's office with the road records.
Uh-huh.
That is the first place we look for roadways, whether they were open, not open. I have a PDF version of the overview, so I don't always need to run to the clerk's office to verify. It has major sheets scanned in.
Mhm.
And it has what year, what road record number it is, so I can go back and look at the road record to see when it was opened and established and the right-of-way widths on there. There's been changes through the years where you have to look at each plat individually, so you need to find for like a subdivision, find out if it's public roadways. You first need to find the plat map in the Register of Deeds office, pull up that plat, or through ArcGIS has some of them on the City of Hayes GIS website. Has a few of those plats, not every plat I found. And in that dedication would say what roads are for public. And then you can drill down and look at ArcGIS and see if there is a gap between parcels. That would lead to believe that there is public right-of-way there. You just have to loop that all back into those open road records.
Yeah.
And then go through the petition look through all the petitions that we have at our office to see if and when there was a petition on it.
How
A
does
lot of
that-
our roadways are on section lines, so all roadways on section lines were established by statute. But then those that weren't built after a set period of 7 years were effectively vacated. So some of those are included on the road record booklet, some of them are not.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of where because we had this with Wise Road there's maps out there that show it as a road, named road.
It shows it on this,
And then
which
we
may be
don't-
an error with
yeah.
GIS, but there's no record of it anywhere in,
And then we had Dawn Street this morning where we're kind of talking about, well,
there's public right of way there, but it's not built to.
yeah, and if we were
for
to
travel.
vacate a road, then how does that get, so through our action, then that goes to the clerk that then has to tell the,
So there'd be a resolution vacating it, and then it would go through the register of deeds to vacate that portion.
and then does
So-
the register of deeds need to report to Esri or however to make sure the maps then reflect that?
That would be my understanding. I don't know if that's happened.
Yeah, at that point, once the resolution has been made and all the paperwork has been done upstairs, a request is made to my department to make those changes to the maps, both on our internal maps and the web maps. So I will add that the information on the website, while we do make our best effort to make that the most current and accurate information, it is not the official record. So
Okay.
if someone wants to find out if a roadway is public or whatever, they need to go through the process he explained.
So now I'm just even more curious about this whole process, so how does that get to like, so my vehicle has GI, driving around and stuff, so if a county closes a road officially or vacates it, how does that all then trickle to like my vehicle, so that way it knows that this is no longer a public road?
Google is the primary provider for that, and they check, I'm not really sure how they verify the information, probably through public records, but the same way that an individual would do it, and they update their data. Their data is completely separate from our data,
it would
but
have to be, but-
it looks the same
Yeah.
often, so.
Okay. So that's, now I'm just curious about
Yeah.
stuff.
So in this process, you're gonna take our map and overlay it once we would get a license? Is that what we're saying? If,
So this is just a drawing.
Right.
That AutoCAD is just drawing. It's not tied to its
Right.
physical location. It can be, but it's not designed for that. The maps that they produce in the GIS division are with ArcGIS. That is tied. If I put a dot on this point, that is its actual GPS coordinate. If I put a line on this map, that's off in space. It does not care where that line is. It does not know its actual position in the physical world. If that answers your question.
If you think of a GIS map in terms of layers, in fact, often if you look at your phone and your Google Earth or whatever, the icon will show pages on top of each other. GIS is basically made up of layers, and each layer has different information on it. The fire department might want a layer that just shows fire hydrants or water sources. That's just one layer, and all it has on that layer is their information. But it lays over the other stuff underneath that shows through. So in this situation, a layer like this could be created that just shows the information you're looking at, the green lines or the blue lines or whatever. And then that can be turned on and off as needed. But it's just a layer, and it just stacks on top of each other. On our website, excuse me, on our GIS website, you can turn on and off layers there as well. If you don't want to see street names, it's just like Google Earth. If you want to turn off street names or this layer, if you want to turn this layer on, you can select all that based on how we set that up.
I feel like that would be helpful. I guess I'll ask Brandon, you're the one in the department. Would that be helpful for you to be able to
Yes, it would be helpful.
not just
for
manage
us.
this, but other projects and stuff?
Yes.
Or a project manager again could,
Like right now, I've been working on for the last 2 years, creating our road record or road inventory. I can't get the information from GIS in a usable format for us, so the work I'm making in our road inventory will never be able to translate back into GIS. So I'm kind of having to work in two places at once. It'd be nice to be able to create that inventory in one system and have it be able to talk to everything,
yes.
instead of working in duplicate or in triplicate.
So because I've asked you for some maps before, you essentially have to kind of create that by,
Kind of. I
drawing.
will build off a base AutoCAD
Yeah.
map that I have and then add in, just
Yeah.
like GIS has layers, there's layers in
Yeah.
AutoCAD for different structures or coloring. But then if you want to see something very different, I turn to our GIS division because they can make those changes globally, quickly, and they also have a plotter to print it out to a usable size for the commissioners.
I think that'd be helpful as we go
I
forward, if
think
we're gonna
so.
look at doing some determinations and kind of getting a grip on where we're at as a county and as Public Works on what we're gonna go.
And I don't want it to seem like the GIS division isn't helping us, they are.
No.
Yeah.
It just, when you're asking for something like this is something I can do.
We're asking-
John and
we're
Eamon
asking
have
for-
enough on their plate, and this is just something that is just to show it's not a permanent thing.
Yeah.
Permanent changes I go to them for.
Yeah.
But just for updating drawings like this, I do it myself in-house because I can turn around,
Yeah.
do it myself on my own schedule.
It also
Actually
seems
put a
like something that,
turnaround.
again, as we create maybe a project manager position, that just having immediate access to this, so that way, again, they can.
Correct. There are some counties where GIS is actually underneath Public Works departments
Mhm.
because they update all,
That's
they
it.
put their culverts in there, they do their inspections, annual inspections on it. The one county in Nebraska I was talking to, they actually film every mile of roadway every year to have a pre-conditioned roadway if there is a disaster. Because when a disaster is declared, you have to justify what the precondition was through records, through pictures, through videos. Do I think we need to go that far on it? No, I think we start the process and
Yeah.
work into that. Eventually, that would be great, but going 0 to 100 on this,
Yeah,
you'll just burn
yeah.
someone out.
Right.
Plus, that emergency management book was already that big.
Exactly. We have some foundation there.
Yeah.
It just take a little bit of integration to start that process better.
Mhm.
I
think
I
taking
like the
steps.
idea because, like say, our sign guy goes out, puts a new sign, culvert, GPS, it's
Well,
there.
and that's,
It's-
we
it's done.
record that in one system, but that doesn't correlate with.
Right.
Its physical location,
Mhm.
GPS location, it doesn't correlate with our GIS system.
Mhm.
Eventually, it'd be nice to every time, and I think it'd be best to either start off slow as something is replaced, it gets added into the system. And those things could be added potentially by this new position that we're creating or position that we're changing into this position here in the future. Instead of putting a request in every 2 days for the GIS division to add in a point. I think that can be done in-house to take some load off of their plate.
Is that something else, Mike, that you maybe possibly be able to do, get like several units of the GPS, so when they do replace a sign, culvert, they see a bad spot, that we could at least have it, and it's available to everybody?
Yes, the Eamon and Chad from the city of Hayes, IT, and myself, our staff, we've been looking at GPS units and evaluating them, and the city has chosen a vendor, and I believe they're in the process of purchasing one for one of their divisions, I think next year. But yeah, we've got that established. We know which units are best for our use. It's just a matter of budgeting for and purchasing those. And, I think it sounds like this is a good opportunity for us to create, it's a project, really. We need to create a project to start leaning into this. Like he said, we don't want to go 0 to 100, but we need to build that, to use the same vernacular, build that base layer of our what we're doing here as a project and easing into that. But GPS units are a good way to start. Now is a good time. They've improved some of the technology for getting more accuracy. So now is actually a good time. They're not a few bucks, but we can get whatever we need as long as we have the budget for it.
Okay, and that was getting my point. And the chair said it with the map with the green lines of our project manager, so we, like, say, don't jump into this, 100%, so we get this all straightened and get it right the first time. So, okay, thank you.
I think maybe to add a little bit of timeline for some of this discussion that's coming up within the next couple commission meeting to discuss, but Brendan's alluded to and the chair's alluded to the project manager position. So we have a retirement That position is going to be recreated into a project manager. The final draft of that position's job description is done. It's in review. It'll be on your July 1st commission agenda, which includes a lot of the GIS information of what we've talked about here today. And then, once that job description gets approved, we can then advertise to fill the position for people to apply. It's probably gonna take the month of July and into August to receive applications, to interview, to offer a job. Once that person gets hired, that's when we look into the next part of this, into the system, so to speak, of tracking road maintenance, which includes GIS, which includes work orders, which includes tracking of signs, includes culverts, size of culverts, all that information, bridges. We want to wait to do that project or find a software, so to speak, until that project manager is hired, because that person is going to be primarily focused on running that system. Once that is hired, or once that person is hired, they review systems. We purchase the system. This is going to be towards the end of the year. At the end of the year, we'll have a better idea on where we're at for budget authority to see if we have remaining in budget authority. We've talked about GIS devices to purchase to implement this into the system. We've talked about software solutions to be able to do that. And so a lot of this is coming in the coming weeks, but that's kind of to recap everything here. A lot will be addressed within that project manager position, which will refocus, instead of this person worrying about the daily operations of the department, but strategically thinking ahead of what Public Works is doing, not in the next couple weeks, but maybe in the next couple months to the next couple years, and acquiring right away, chunking this out that says we want to do this road in 2028 with 2 miles of right of way we don't have. We can then acquire the right of way, budget for the purchase of the right of way, replacing the fence, the project, all that kind of stuff, and kind of be thinking more proactively ahead and putting a better plan in place into the future. So that's what all this is kind of coming to in the next couple of months as we go through the budget this year to see what kind of authority we have, but then also to help budget for next year, because there are devices that are going to have to be tracked, putting devices in individual units, pieces of equipment to track maintenance that is done that day, projects that are done, replacements that are, culverts that are done, signs that are placed, et cetera. We'll be inputting all that information into a system to be able to track it all better. So that's kind of how the next couple of months are shaping up into a lot of this discussion here today.
And that system will be built off of the GIS layers that we already created, and we'll create new layers that will be in GIS. This system just allows you to select them and add in maintenance items and daily work orders and things like that. But it's built off of our GIS, so having that better integration with GIS would help with that software being successful, that work order tracking being successful.
I think that's what we're trying to do up here, is to try and help give you the tools
Correct.
to make the position a success.
Yep, and like Darren and Mike alluded to, there has been a big change in the technologies out there. I don't think we need to spend $80,000 on a rover and base station to get sub-centimeter accuracy or sub-millimeter accuracy. A handheld unit for $1,000 to get, at worst case, 5-foot accuracy in any direction is plenty fine for this overall road system. We're not trying to survey in water lines to know their physical location to dig it up. It's just, it gives us a point on a map so we can quickly look back and see how many times that sign's been vandalized or how often it's been replaced to keep things in compliance.
Very good. And I think that's what our overall discussion here with the right-of-way is. We're just trying to help look forward, and I mean, we're trying to address it with the project manager and be forward-thinking, I guess, is where we're at.
Did we jump the gun a little bit, Darren? You already had a lot of it in place, but we were,
No, I think it was just a
Okay.
good opportunity to discuss what we're kind of building and working on. And it's going to take several months to just get something going, but it's also, I think, imperative that the commission understand that even if we go 0 to 20, that's probably going to capture a very small portion. We have tens of thousands of culverts that need to be tracked that aren't being tracked over 1,400 miles of road or so. That's going to take a significant amount of time. The other piece that we're trying to consider as well is GIS interns, that we might be able to work with Fort Hays State to get some GIS experience, get them out, and they can help do some identification within the county as well.
I guess from my standpoint on kind of the immediate stuff, and I know it's listed as right away here, but I get, and I know it's gonna go back to the project manager, but breaking things up and identifying roads that are not roads that we maintain or roads that we maintain that, you know, are substandard. I guess the main thing would be the roads that are not actually roads that we have maintained and shown maintenance on. Finding those, identifying those, and deciding what to do and cleaning those situations up would be kind of, I guess from my standpoint, a priority starting so we can establish what we're supposed to be doing and put our attention to that area and getting off of some of the other areas. So I guess that, and it stems from the Wiles Road, the Dawn Street, the Smoky Hill River Road 6 months ago. It stems from projects like that, you know, I know there's, and it's not identified on this map, I don't believe, but you've identified a number of other locations that we currently maintain that we have no right of way, or we have no
Most
access.
of them are on this map,
On the
majority
blue
of them.
map, okay.
On the second,
second
I believe, yes. First one was just narrow right of ways, the second one was,
Okay, yeah.
we
the
combine these
beginnings.
two items into one.
Yeah.
Because the narrow right of ways was something that was been asked of me to present in the future. I had that completed. Aaron and myself felt it was good time to bring them forward together as one item to show.
So all the little yellow on the second map, I think are potential hotspots that we probably need to start looking to address, or, and even the blue ones, but, where we have no right of way, but we're maintaining things.
Those ones
Is
are
that,
green.
is that best use of our manpower and our dollars?
That's why I said we can't just
Yeah,
broad stroke
yeah,
everything. We
we
need to look
can't.
at each one
Well,
individually, case
exactly,
by case basis.
and that's why I suggested we break this out into different areas
Yeah,
and just start
and look at,
going through it.
Like the yellow that's all the way on the eastern edge of the county, just north of Wiles Roadway. That is something the county's maintained. The county at one point had a rock pit back there. Fort Hays State also has ground back there. There was a sinkhole in past years, I believe, adjacent to it. So they would go out and look at it or take students there. That might have been, we had been asked to blade it one time, or we bladed it when we were retrieving material from that pit. And that's why maintenance is continued, because they were directed to continue.
Situations like that,
Yeah.
we just need to kind of go through and clear out.
It needs cleaned up.
Because there's, you know,
Yeah.
there's man hours.
yes.
You
So
know,
that-
whether that's an hour here and an hour there, those are miles that aren't on our good roads or FAS routes that aren't being intended to.
And this is the macro scale, Eugene put together the micro scale,
Mhm.
and you'll see that in another future agenda item with all the rural subdivisions. And you've seen some of it previously when I brought in the subdivisions, it was last year, just the ones joining Hayes, if their commission was gonna create a position just to maintain those rural subdivisions. It had the roadways on there, what was publicly maintained, what was privately maintained, what was not built, and the mileage on each of those roadways, so.
That's why I suggest we need to chunk this up and,
There's a lot of data to digest there.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, there's a lot of data and
There's a lot that went into putting it together.
yeah. And I appreciate that, Brendan, thank you, because there's a lot here. But I think we need to really chunk this up and
Yeah.
start a somewhat identify a process that we want to utilize and start going through it methodically. I know the project manager is a big point, but that's gonna be like drinking
Yeah.
water from the fire hose that when he gets hired, if we dump it on him. So if we have a process identified that we wanna start,
Yeah.
we could start
Yeah.
identifying people that'll help work on it.
The other nice thing about this map, publicly, again, and I appreciate that you put it together too, is again, when these things kind of come up, it's usually one individual. It's like, well, how much can it be? Just help me with my road you always have. But when you put it on a map like this and show all the areas
They
that
just
everybody
helping me.
wants us to help me, there's a lot.
Yeah, and when you get
And that's
down to
where,
the micro
again,
scale,
I
it's even
think
more.
our commission is trying to say, we got to get back, and then But be proactive about it, so that way we're not just cutting people off or waiting for them to complain, is to show the public. There's a lot of just me in my driveway that wants help. And at some point, we just can't. And I think we'll reach that point, so. Okay. We good for now?
I think we're
Good
good, but
discussion.
I think it's something that we need to address
Yep.
in the near future.
Continue,
is,
keep it.
Identify a process.
Okay, good. Not on the agenda, but added on, further discussion on the Victoria request. I asked Darren to put this on and see if the fellow commissioners would ask about it. We've discussed this last week and then the week before. And I don't know, as I rethought about it, I kind of felt like I made my own errors. I went Friday to look at it, and that's my own fault. I had not actually gone out and looked at where the request was. I just kind of saw the map and just drew that. So I did meet with Brennan Friday to look at what it is the Victoria is doing, what could be our responsibility, what the area looked like with all the potholes and all that. So I got a better visual of it. And then, as I thought, and if I'd have been quicker on my feet last week, I seconded the motion, which then forced us into a vote. What I probably should have done is not seconded it and let that motion die, and then had a further discussion. So that's where I asked Darren to kind of put it back on as I rethought about it. I want to help in a way, so I kind of thought in my head, as I thought through the week, I'd be comfortable with like I think 25,000 is what I asked, because that's essentially the discretionary amount that we have. Darren would have as the administrator. I asked Brendan what his discretionary amount is, 5,000. So in my head, I was like, I think that's, to me, an appropriate amount. So that's what I'm asking my fellow commissioners to maybe consider if we want to.
I mean, I'm on board with that. I think that would, I don't think the city is gonna turn you down by any means, but, I can understand. I mean, we're gonna have some savings.
Yes.
And we've made it very, very clear to try and address road issues as they come up, and this is a great place to keep doing that.
So the 25,000, is that going to be both approaches or the east approach? Is that split between both of them?
I believe the city's just doing the east approach this time, so my understanding would be it would go for the east approach that they will
Okay.
do.
And they would hopefully budget and consult with us on a better time frame for the east, or I'm
West
sorry, the
Main
west.
West,
West,
Yes,
west.
for the future,
Yeah.
on that future project.
Yeah. And to be clear, it'd still be the 25 out of Public Works, but I was just using the discretionary amounts, so I'm not asking for it to come out of the administrative budget. It would still come out of there, but that's where I came up with the number, so
And that'd be coming out of Fund 78, correct?
I believe so.
For projects.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Okay.
So do we have a motion I can read, or?
Do you still have that PO that you had a couple,
I think we have to create a new one. That would-
tossed it? If, I guess you don't necessarily have to approve the PO itself, you can approve the purchase and assign the Public Works Director to
Yeah.
approve the PO, or we can just wait until the July 1st and do it like we do every other practice and just put the PO on the July 1st agenda with the amount, the PO number. Brendan, I believe, is gonna be here anyway with the job descriptions, so
Okay.
I guess that would be my recommendation, is put it on there and keep our practice the same.
I'm good
I'll
with
agree
that.
with that.
Okay.
I'd rather have it in the July 1st one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last item, County Commission budget.
Darren Myers, County Administrator. The County Commission budget for 2026 is within your agenda to consider for any changes that you may want to make for next year. As you can see, the proposed budget, just based on history of the last couple years throughout the entire commission budget, has been reduced by about $1,400 or $1,600. The biggest, besides the salaries of the commissioners, the biggest piece pieces to the puzzle for your budget. Obviously, we pay for our county counselors' services out of your budget, and service memberships is the biggest, and that is the dues and memberships line item of 19,000. It's staying the same there, but that's the biggest chunk of your discretionary amount within the budget. So I guess this doesn't really change much overall. This kind of accounts, this has grown a little bit because this commission, over the last couple of years, has been more active and more engaged in attending conferences and going to meetings throughout the state on representing the Kansas Association of Counties, the County Kansas Administrators, or Kansas County Commissioners Association meetings and conferences. So those trips and meetings do cost a little bit, but overall, from this year to next year, there is a $1,600 reduction in your budget, and just thought I'd give you any. We usually review this every year in June as the commission is putting the entire budget together, so that's why it's on here today. And if you do want to know what that dues and memberships line item is, I have them broken out if you are interested what memberships the commission is including in. I'll just state them. The National Association of Counties, NACO, the Kansas League of Municipalities, the Kansas Legislative Policy Group, KLPG, KAC is the Kansas Association of Counties, the KCCA is the Kansas County Commissioners Association, the Kansas Counselors Association that Mr. Jeter's a part of, and then the Western Kansas Congressional Delegation, which is our annual visits with the legislature at the federal level. And that totals up to be just right around that $19,000.
Is that for next year, are we planning to go to DC or not? It's planned to be back here usually, isn't it?
Sarah was here a little bit ago, but their plan was to go back and forth every year. But it sounds like the group has decided that it is more effective and more efficient, or more effective for the legislature, more impactful than if we go out there every year. They receive that better. When we had that last time here 2 years ago in Dodge, most of the legislators didn't come out. It was just some of their local staff that were at that meeting.
Yeah. We also had a big storm roll through, so
Yeah.
everybody scattered.
We jetted pretty early.
Yeah. One thing that I did notice on our, is the RAWS, the Rural Opportunity Zone.
Yes.
We're just finishing that out, and that'll be non-existent in 27. Is that about correct?
I'm sorry, I did have a note to mention that the RAWS amount did reduce.
Yeah.
We are no longer a RAWS eligible county. However, the ones that they have pushed through or have been previously approved, we're still obligated to pay our $1,500 a year. So that $9,000 is what is already been approved, and they're trying to push through some final ones before, I think the end of this month is their deadline. But if they end up approving more after this, we can adjust it. We do get emails when they do get them approved for both the city of Hays and Ellis County are both part of the RAWS program. So that's why that line item is reduced.
Okay.
And scholarships, there's been a question. So scholarships, we're doing 10,000 a year renewable. So next year we'll be paying, we have 10,000 for the ones that we were awarded this year, but we also potentially have the 10,000 that were awarded last year. It's renewable for one more year. So we have to budget for those. I mean, they may, if they don't attend the school again, then they would not receive that scholarship. But from a budgeting practice, we have to we'll be budgeting $20,000 right now perpetually. Right?
That is correct. So for this year's budget, we're paying the second year of last year's awardees and then the first year of this year's that the commission approved. Next year's budget will be the second year of this year's and the first year of next year. So.
And for public knowledge, we made a change last year that is not on property taxes. That is accounted for by pulling out of our sales tax. So we are not charging county taxpayers property tax dollars for those scholarships.
That's affirmative. At the top of that line item budget is the revenue code that shows $20,000 in revenue that is being pulled into the general fund from the sales tax collections
Okay.
to offset that, so that way it doesn't, that 20,000 isn't used by property taxes.
What's, so going back to our subscriptions, so with a DC trip, what are we budgeting per commissioner on that?
I'd have to go back and check. We put that, I mean, there's several fees, because
And that's part of the 19,000, or that's somewhere else?
just the cost share, because there's fees that we have to pay to rent the rooms, to provide the snacks, the coffee, the drinks, the room rental. And then like the Capitol Club Plaza and all that, where we have that social evening hour with the legislatures. All those have expenses, they all get combined. And then if there's 15 different agencies that year and it costs $15,000, that gets split up to be $1,000. In 2025 this year, that expense was $787 that we cost shared between all those other cities and counties that went down there. And other corporations, their sponsors and stuff that come in and help with those assistance. But the Chamber of Commerce usually does that. But yes, that group, not the group rate, the rate is split up between everybody, and that's where it is inserted. And this year, that was $787.
Okay. And then what's NACO cost?
$369,
Okay, that's not
or
much.
$569, I'm sorry.
Relative. NACO's probably the one I guess I don't get a lot out of. I get their emails with pictures and stuff, but I don't, as far as participation, or I don't tend to get a lot out of them.
I'm the same way.
All
I
the
don't
other
get a
ones
lot
I
of-
do, I
Yep.
think we all try to participate when we can. We go. I get a lot out of KAC and KCCA, I really do. But NACO as a national county one, I guess there's some interesting stories, but as far as how it makes me think, I don't really get much out of it. And I don't know if it's not a lot, but at the same time, I don't know if that affects the other ones, because I know when we're at KAC and case, they talk about NACO, and sometimes they have them on Zoom talking to us. So I don't know if that would affect the membership to those other organizations if we weren't part of NACO, or?
I believe, if I remember right, Kansas used to be one of the top states in the nation that had the most members within the state that were a part of NACO. I can bring back at a future meeting, if the commission likes, the benefits that you get from NACO other than your weekly spotlight emails and such. There are some services that we get. I know one that Donna Maskus, the previous county clerk, they used to have a prescription discount card that members, employees could utilize. But I'll see what I can get, and I'll shoot that to the commissioners through an email, and then you can review those benefits to see if that's something you want to continue with or not.
Yeah, yes, please do, because I think, for some reason, I think that membership may allow some of our other elected officials' memberships in different
Yeah, it
areas.
seems like it does, and I don't want to
So I
impact
think
something
that-
else.
yeah. But if you could get us that information, would be great. I don't see, the attorney's fees and stuff, that's been pretty steady.
And another thing with NACO too, if you're part of the organization when they have their conferences, if you're a member, you usually get a discounted rate when you attend their conference. 5 years or so ago, I went to the NACO conference. It was only because it was in Aurora, Colorado, and it was drivable, and it was very inexpensive, but unless it was close again, I don't know if I would ever attend one of those again. It's not necessarily for county administrators. Mike Liker was actually out there because we were looking at software solutions and stuff, and but those conferences are all over that you'd have to be flying to, and it would be several. That I don't know if it would really be worth the savings of $300 or $500 just to be able to possibly have a discount to attend their conference.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same way with that one. It's almost that when I get it, I'm just thumbing through it because I don't get a lot out of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen a really big changes, nothing that's just,
Yeah, overall, I think it's good.
Good.
Okay, county administrator report.
One thing that I wanted to discuss real quick, even though we've been here for a while, the agenda item for this week, as we send you the future agendas now, we did have the R&R notification to the clerk's agenda item on here. I did push that back probably until, I would say, mid-July. It's not due to the county clerk until July 20th. But at the last commission meeting, Commissioner Burgess mentioned possibly future discussion on what we look like for the budget in preparation for some future years with the legislative process on property tax reductions and such. So with that, I did pull that agenda item, so that way the commissioners do have another option to discuss that a little bit more. So that way, when I get that form filled out to the county clerk, it not only mentions yes or no, do we want to exceed or stay the same, but also what your expected mill levy is and property tax collection rate is. So I felt it was best to pull that agenda from today and put that into a mid-July discussion before the budget hearings, so that way it can be discussed again and still have time to get back to the county clerk. Just thought I'd just explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Neil? Any comments?
Yeah, I did go to the horseshoe ribbon cutting. They've got a lot of stuff that they're gonna start doing, live bands, that kind of stuff, which is nice, give people something to do. And then I did go to the Northwest Juvenile and Corrections. I did ask the question that we approved on the people carrying the cell phones for their, so they don't miss their appointments and they can make their appointments over the phone. Aaron had said there was a little bit of a glitch in there, but they got that taken care of, and they said that's working good, and they thanked us for that. Also, I did go to the gala at Fort Hays. Their theme was Don't Stop Believing, and I guess those of us up in the age know that song, and that's something that I feel that the county can do as we were going through this with the GIS. So we are, if we believe it, we can do it, and the same with the roads that are not being used that much. And the other thing, everybody be careful and have a good 4th of July, and be careful, and hopefully no fires. And also, we had mentioned a little earlier about harvest. Everybody be careful. There's going to be a lot of slow-moving traffic and high-speed traffic to get the product to the elevator. So that's all I have.
Nathan?
I'll reiterate, everybody pays extra attention during harvest. I know our road crews, think Brendan's still here, they're gonna get out and they're gonna get things bladed and in shape. We couldn't ask for better time on the rain to get things maintained, so I know they're out there working, they've got everybody up and running, so kudos to that crew and keeping it up and going, and they're gonna do their best to get out of everybody's way. So I have no other comment.
This week, I don't have any comments. Go into executive session then.
Okay. I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess to an executive session for 10 minutes under the following exemption to the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to the non-elected personnel matter exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is personal matters. Those in attendance, the Board of County Commissioners, and Mr. Bill Jeters, Mr. Darren Myers, and Mr. Mike Liker.
Second that. Did we put a time?
Oh, yes, time will be, give me 10:22.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to go into executive session. Any comments or thoughts? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, passes 3-0.
we would. Go ahead.
We're gonna extend it, how much, they have, 5?
Five.
Extend the executive session for 5 more minutes to 10:29.
I'll second it.
Yeah, motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0. executive session at 10:31. No decisions were made.
Okay, I will motion for another executive session for, I move the county Board of Commissioners are recessed to executive session for 20 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to the non-elected personnel matter exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is a personal issue. Those in attendance, in addition to the Board of County Commissioners, are Mr. Bill Jeter, Mr. Darren Myers, and Mr. Gary Haas. And we will, 45, that work?
Good work.
Seconded.
Okay.
We got a motion second on go into executive session. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. extend for another 10 minutes
11:10?
to 11:10. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 2-0. executive session. We're gonna extend for 10 more minutes to 11:25.
Yep, that'll work. Okay, I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 2-0. Executive session 11:25, no decisions were made.
Okay. Motion for an executive session. I move the Board of County Commissioners recess to an executive session for 10 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is potential litigation. Those attending are the 3 county commissioners, Mr. Bill Jeter and Mr. Darren Myers.
Second that.
And we will go to 11:36.
Okay, got a motion and a second on the table. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. Decisions were made, and we're gonna adjourn
11:46.
County Commission at 11:46. Oh, I hit that one.
See
too
ya.
hard.